A massive seaweed bloom in the Caribbean is heading our way, and it literally will bury our beach.
Catastrophic flooding in Texas, where the lieutenant governor is now saying there are children.
Cracks have begun to open beneath the Texas coast, splitting the earth in silent, ominous ruptures that have left scientists gripped by unease. These fissures, some stretching for hundreds of feet, have appeared seemingly out of nowhere, slicing through salt marshes, creeping near coastal communities and warping the very ground that had remained stable for centuries. It's not a scene from a disaster movie. This is unfolding in real time, and experts are struggling to understand the magnitude of what they're witnessing. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The Texas Gulf Coast has always danced on a delicate geologic line, shaped by the pull of tides, the weight of sediment from ancient rivers, and the deep rumblings of the Earth's crust. It has long been seen as a dynamic environment, but one that was understood, predictable, at least to a degree. But the sudden appearance of deep, irregular fractures has disrupted that sense of security. These cracks are not mere surface blemishes. Some plunge several feet into the ground, cutting through layers of compacted earth, sandy clay, and bedrock like knives through soft wax. At first, the appearance of one or two fissures was dismissed as minor, perhaps caused by shifting groundwater levels or local subsidence. But that optimism dissolved quickly as more began to appear. The cracks didn't follow any typical pattern. They zigzagged across the coastal terrain erratically, expanding in width and depth, defying conventional geological explanations. Entire stretches of land have been torn as if by invisible hands, and in some areas the soil has sunk several inches, forming depressions and collapses that threaten infrastructure, homes, and natural habitats. What alarms geologists the most is the speed at which these phenomena have developed. Crustal movements are often slow, sometimes taking years or decades to produce noticeable changes. But the Texas coastal cracks emerged in a matter of weeks, suggesting that something immense and previously undetected is stirring beneath the surface. Satellite imagery confirmed subtle shifts in land elevation over broad swaths of the coast, changes that were not recorded just months prior. The Earth, it seems, is heaving under pressures that may have been building quietly for decades, now finally breaking free. One theory gaining traction is that the Gulf Coast is experiencing accelerated subsidence, a process where the ground gradually sinks due to the removal of underground support, often through the extraction of oil, gas, or water. Texas, with its long history of fossil fuel drilling and groundwater pumping, is no stranger to subsidence. But what makes the current situation different is the scale and violence of the cracking. Rather than a slow, steady decline, this appears to be a sudden geological buckling, suggesting that whatever balance once existed beneath the coast has now been catastrophically upset. Seismologists are also examining the possibility of deep fault lines reawakening. While Texas is not typically associated with major seismic activity, there are faults beneath the surface that have lain dormant for millennia. The stress redistribution from human activities, such as hydraulic fracking, deep well injection, and massive industrial weight on the surface, might be agitating these ancient fractures. If these underground structures are moving even slightly, it could explain the strange and abrupt splitting of the land. Adding to the complexity is the region's proximity to the Gulf of Mexico. The immense pressure exerted by rising sea levels, now inching higher due to climate change, could be playing a silent yet powerful role. As salt water infiltrates further inland, it changes the salinity and composition of coastal soils, making them more prone to collapse and cracking. Coastal erosion is also accelerating, removing layers of natural protection and exposing the subsurface to increased mechanical stress. Combined, these factors create a volatile scenario, a perfect storm for unexpected geophysical responses. The implications for ecosystems are severe. The Texas coast is home to a rich mosaic of wetlands, estuaries, and marine life. Cracks in the earth disrupt freshwater flows, alter salinity gradients, and physically damage root systems in marsh grasses and mangroves. If the subsurface continues to deform, entire habitats could shift or disappear. Already there are reports of fish kills in some shallow bayous near the cracked zones, potentially tied to changes in groundwater chemistry or sudden sediment releases. For human communities, the threat is no less urgent. Some cracks have appeared disturbingly close to neighborhoods, creeping under roads and threatening the foundations of buildings. Emergency response teams are scrambling to assess the structural integrity of levees, drainage systems, and power lines. In rural areas, farmers have found deep ruptures slicing through fields, making planting dangerous and harvesting impossible. Livestock are at risk from collapsing ground, and water wells in some regions have begun yielding cloudy, discolored water, possibly contaminated by shifting underground materials. What's perhaps most unsettling is the silence. These cracks don't come with dramatic tremors or roaring sounds. They emerge quietly in the dead of night or in the heat of afternoon, as though the Earth itself is trying to send a message that few are ready to receive. The lack of seismic warning means there's no way to predict where the next split might appear. Every square foot of vulnerable coastline is now under watch, and anxiety is growing among residents who fear that their land, their homes, their heritage is literally falling apart beneath them. Research institutions have begun deploying advanced ground-penetrating radar, laser scanning systems, and geological drones to monitor the phenomenon. The initial data is troubling. Beneath the surface, the cracked areas show extensive networks of voids and fractures, some of which extend for miles. These aren't isolated incidents, but part of a larger pattern, one that is unfolding faster than experts can analyze it. Layers of silt, clay, and ancient sediment are buckling, twisting, and breaking apart, suggesting that the Earth is in a state of mechanical stress rarely seen in this region. Water flow patterns are shifting as well. In some areas, underground aquifers appear to be draining unexpectedly, as if the water is being pulled into new underground chambers created by the fracturing rock. This can result in sinkholes forming with little warning, further complicating the geological situation. As the water table adjusts, surface vegetation changes too, dying off in patches, or failing to thrive where it once grew abundantly. Local ecologists have expressed deep concern over the long-term viability of traditional agriculture and natural flora along the coast. Speculation runs high in the absence of definitive answers. Some wonder if this is a precursor to a larger seismic event, a tectonic awakening that could shake not just Texas but the wider southern United States. Others point to industrial irresponsibility, suggesting that decades of extracting resources without fully understanding the geological cost are finally catching up. Regardless of cause, the visible reality is undeniable. The Earth is cracking open, and it refuses to be ignored. The psychological toll is growing. Coastal residents report sleepless nights, constant vigilance, and a creeping dread that nothing is as stable as it once seemed. There is a deep fear that even with all the technology and scientific knowledge available, some forces of nature remain beyond human control. Scientists are working around the clock, but even they admit, albeit reluctantly, that they are racing against a phenomenon they do not yet fully understand. Infrastructure planners are beginning to rethink development along the coast. Projects once thought to be safe now require complete reassessment. Bridges, pipelines, ports, all of it must be evaluated in light of the unstable ground. The potential economic impact is staggering. Shipping and logistics companies, oil refineries, and commercial fisheries all rely on a stable coastal zone. If the cracks continue to spread, entire sectors of the Texas economy could be thrown into turmoil. Culturally, the implications are equally profound. The Texas coast is home to deep historical roots, with communities that stretch back generations. For many, the land itself holds ancestral significance. Watching it fracture is more than just a scientific anomaly, it's a personal tragedy. Cemeteries have been affected. Historical markers have tilted or collapsed. Sacred spaces are now split down the middle, symbols of a deeper rupture between the past and an uncertain future. What makes this event stand out even more is that it defies easy categorization. It's not a single earthquake, not a storm, not a flood. It's a slow-motion disaster that's difficult to frame within traditional emergency paradigms. Emergency management systems are built for events that have a clear beginning and end. But the cracks under Texas are not stopping. They continue to spread, to shift, to evolve. This makes planning and response incredibly difficult and deeply unnerving. Scientists are left to piece together ancient maps, sedimentary records, and the latest satellite readings, hoping to discern a pattern or clue that can reveal what's coming next. But every answer only leads to more questions. How deep do these cracks go? Are they connected? Could they open further into vast chasms or trigger other geological hazards like landslides or offshore tremors? Speculative models suggest that if the cracking continues, there could be long-term consequences not just for Texas, but for the broader Gulf region. Shorelines might retreat faster than predicted. Estuarine systems might collapse. Fault networks might activate in unpredictable ways. In a worst-case scenario, large portions of the coast could become uninhabitable, not in centuries, but potentially within a generation. This possibility, once relegated to science fiction or fringe theory, is now being whispered about in scientific circles with increasing seriousness. While there is no consensus yet, the mere fact that such discussions are happening reveals just how destabilizing the current situation is. There is a palpable sense that this event, the cracking of the Texas coast, could be a pivotal moment in geological history. In the coming weeks and months, more cracks are likely to appear. Some will be small, barely noticeable. Others may be devastating. What's certain is that the earth beneath the Texas coast is changing and fast. As scientists dig deeper, both literally and figuratively, they may uncover the truth of what's unfolding. But until then, they watch and wait as the ground opens silently, reminding all who witness it that even the most solid ground can, without warning, break apart. As the fractures continue to deepen along the Texas coast, new layers of complexity begin to emerge. Not just geologically, but in terms of how interconnected systems are being impacted by this quiet upheaval. Beneath the ground, once predictable aquifers are beginning to shift. Hydrologists are detecting odd fluctuations in groundwater pressure, which have raised serious concerns about water supply reliability in several coastal towns. These changes are subtle but persistent. Wells that previously produced a steady flow are now pulsing inconsistently, as if breathing with the movement of the earth. In some areas, water tables are collapsing altogether, cutting off long-standing sources of fresh water. This disruption of groundwater patterns brings with it another troubling consequence: the potential for saltwater intrusion. With the underground barriers between seawater and freshwater beginning to crack and crumble, saltwater is seeping into previously protected aquifers. Once this happens, the damage is nearly irreversible. Agricultural lands that have relied on freshwater irrigation now face a future where the water feeding their crops could be turning saline. That could spell disaster for Texas's coastal farming communities, whose livelihoods are already precariously balanced amid climate instability and increasing land degradation. Geological field teams have noted another anomaly: an uptick in the emission of soil gases from the ground surrounding the cracks. Carbon dioxide, methane, and in some rare cases, trace amounts of hydrogen sulfide have been detected escaping from new fault openings. These gases are usually locked deep within the earth, only released when underlying rock layers are disturbed or fractured. The sudden presence of these gases suggests the cracks are more than surface-level disruptions. They are reaching deep into Earth's crust, far deeper than initially anticipated. These emissions aren't yet at dangerous levels, but their mere existence is a signal that deep structural shifts are in play. Adding to the mounting mystery is the behavior of magnetic fields in the affected regions. Scientists measuring geomagnetic activity along the coast have reported slight anomalies. Not strong enough to interfere with daily life, but unusual in their presence and location. These could point to subterranean mineral shifts or changes in the crystalline structure of rocks caused by stress, heat, or pressure. While inconclusive, these readings offer another thread in the growing web of evidence that what's happening is not isolated. It's systemic. Wildlife, always a sensitive early warning system, is reacting to the shifts. In marshes and estuaries near the fracture zones, bird migration patterns have altered. Flocks that once nested predictably are rerouting or failing to return at all. Amphibian populations, reliant on stable groundwater levels and specific pH balances in their environments, are experiencing sharp declines. Some reptiles have been found dead in areas they typically avoid, possibly displaced or confused by subtle shifts in terrain and magnetoreception. Nature seems to be sounding an alarm in the only language it knows: retreat, disorientation, silence. Marine biologists have been tracking changes in the behavior of fish and crustaceans in waters adjacent to the cracked zones. Offshore sonar has picked up strange reverberations, suggesting underwater collapses or the formation of submarine fissures mirroring those on land. These underwater features pose a unique threat to offshore infrastructure, such as pipelines and drilling platforms, many of which run through or near the newly active areas. If the seafloor is shifting in response to the land fractures, it could lead to a cascade of failures across multiple energy and transportation networks. The fractures have also disrupted cultural and archaeological landmarks. Along the coast, indigenous heritage sites, some dating back thousands of years, have been impacted by the sudden deformation of land. In several cases, petroglyphs and burial mounds have cracked or collapsed, erasing irreplaceable cultural history in an instant. Teams of archaeologists are now racing to document what remains, forced to work in unstable terrain where every day presents a new danger. The effort is not just scientific, it's an attempt to preserve stories embedded in the earth before the earth itself erases them. Urban planners are grappling with long-term consequences for zoning and development. New construction in the affected zones has been put on indefinite hold, and existing structures are undergoing emergency evaluations for fault proximity and soil integrity. Insurance firms are becoming hesitant to underwrite properties in the expanding risk zones, further complicating the futures of residents whose homes may now be unsellable. City councils and local governments face an impossible balancing act, reassuring the public while preparing for the worst. The real estate implications are staggering. Coastal property, once seen as prime investment material, is rapidly losing its value in areas near the cracks. Landowners who once dreamed of developing beachside homes or commercial resorts are watching their investments become financial sinkholes. The psychological weight of seeing the land physically break apart, combined with the sudden collapse of economic prospects, is taking a heavy toll on coastal communities. People are not just afraid of the ground, they are afraid of losing everything they've built upon it. Educational institutions have shifted focus as well. Universities with geology and environmental science programs are sending their brightest minds to the coast, treating the unfolding event as a real-time laboratory. Students are studying the cracks not through textbooks, but by walking them, measuring them, listening to them. In a way, the fractures have become a living curriculum, redefining how young scientists learn about Earth's forces. Yet even with the intellectual excitement, there is a somber undertone. The stakes are real, the damage irreversible, the lessons hard-earned. Religious and spiritual interpretations have also emerged. In a region deeply tied to faith traditions, some see the fractures as a divine message or reckoning. Services have been held near the most visible cracks, with prayers offered not just for safety, but for understanding. This symbolic response, while not scientific, reflects the deep emotional resonance the event has carved into the public consciousness. When the very land cracks beneath one's feet, it forces existential questions to the surface. Economically, the state is beginning to feel ripple effects. Texas is a vital hub for trade, industry, and agriculture, all of which require solid ground, stable infrastructure, and predictable terrain. The cracks are introducing uncertainty into logistics chains and slowing the pace of investment. Companies that once saw the Gulf Coast as a reliable foundation for operations are now eyeing other regions. If the situation escalates, the loss in tax revenue, with so many airports located on flat, low-elevation land near the coast, any shifts in terrain could affect runways, navigation systems, and underground support structures. Engineers are re-evaluating tarmac designs and considering future-proofing measures in case the land continues to warp. In a worst-case scenario, entire transportation hubs may need to be relocated or rebuilt. The fractures are also forcing a re-evaluation of energy policy. Texas is a leading producer of both fossil fuels and renewable energy, and much of its energy infrastructure is concentrated along the coastal plain. From wind farms to oil terminals, everything now rests on increasingly unpredictable ground. This has prompted discussions at the highest levels of government and industry about diversification, decentralization, and the urgent need for geotechnical audits across the board. Amid all of this, the mood across the coast is changing. What was once a region defined by resilience and rugged optimism now pulses with a quiet tension. People speak in hushed tones about the new cracks, and neighbors trade stories of sudden dips in their backyards or strange noises in the night. Children are being taught how to spot dangerous fissures, and schools are conducting drills not just for fires or storms, but for ground instability. The land is no longer something taken for granted. It's something watched, feared, measured. Journalists and documentarians have flocked to the region, capturing drone footage of the ruptured terrain, conducting interviews with shell-shocked residents, and chronicling the transformation of what was once a placid stretch of coast. These images are now being seen around the world, sparking international interest and concern. As climate change continues to intensify, many wonder if the Texas cracks are a local anomaly or an early signal of wider planetary shifts. Could other coasts follow? Are we witnessing the beginning of a new phase of Earth behavior? If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on the Texas coast cracks? Do you think disaster is coming? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.